So first of all, welcome. It's May 2nd, and we've got our next public TST meeting here. We have 3 out of 5 of our TST members attending. Great. Hopefully we'll get 1 or 2 more. We'll see. And I, I I hope it's not too boring when the agenda doesn't seem to change much from month to month, but we do have things like the P4 workshop and Google Summer of Code that we do want to track and give you updates on as they progress. So, but we are adding a few more things on the agenda, and if anybody has anything they would like to add to the agenda, if you'd like to mention it now, great. I'll give you a few seconds to think. But also feel free to mention it later. All right. Again, feel free to bring it up later. We'll go in order here with the order that I've got. Nothing sacred about it, but it'll keep me from accidentally skipping something. So I've mentioned before, p4.org is looking for help with CI/CD tasks, especially so Fabian, I think, has taken on the lion's share of this work for the last roughly year and a half or so, maybe longer. In fact, just this last week, GitHub CI/CD tests updated the version of Fedora Linux that they use, I think, as a base, and that caused a new version of GCC to be brought in, which caused compilation failures for P4C. And I guess, I don't know if we actually have the ability in GitHub to pin an older version of Fedora or whether they just automatically update every once in a while. Like, I think Fedora updates every year. So anyway, it's clear that these kind of things do happen periodically, a couple times a year, if not maybe 3 or 4 times a year. I think things break. Even though we don't try to use new versions of stuff, GitHub makes us update versions of stuff we're using in testing. So Michelle has, Fabian and I have written a kind of a summary statement of work of the kinds of tasks that he's been doing and that we'd like to see done in the next year or so. Michelle, I think you ran that by the Linux Foundation, which has staff that can do these kinds of tasks. And right now, I believe that, so the next P4 governance board meeting, since this involves spending P4.org money, the governance board is involved in deciding how much and to whom, who we will hire for this purpose. But we have at least the 2 possibilities are down to the Linux Foundation services, which would be spread over many people with different expertise, which would be a nice thing to have, versus maybe one person who would be focused on it, but kind of a jack of all trades for a while, but focused on us. So the governance board, I think, will have the final decision there, but just letting you know the updates that we're getting closer to hiring such a person, I think, or service.
Andy, I think it's actually this group that should make a recommendation to the board, because at least for those 2 options, the price would be the same for the one
it's really the kind of
you
service we
found.
think is best.
Yeah, and LFIT support, it would be like the same scope, same cost, same hours dedicated. So it's really this board, if you feel like a single person would better fit based on Brian's resume, I think.
So I've seen some of the email, and Fabi and I did talk to a candidate named Brian who's done this kind of work for the Haskell programming language before, and he seems good, solid, has the kinds of things we described, the task we described sounds like they were either things he'd done before, definitely, or adjacent to things he'd done before. I guess, I don't know, Fabian, I don't know, you and I haven't talked live, but some of the email discussion is sort of like, the advantage to Linux Foundation is they're going to have these services available for as long as Linux Foundation exists. So longevity and a relatively broad pool of staff with different focused expertise that can each be brought to bear as and when needed, if different expertise was needed. I think the advantage to hiring one person, and Brian in particular, is I think right now we have like a bunch of different mismatched pieces. Like if we had one person that would kind of try to unify things and get a flow, a big picture and document things, that would be a much better position than to transition if needed to, 1 or 2 years down the road, to a staff that said, oh, here's the documentation for how things are set up. I just need to keep this running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it also was my initial thinking, but I mean, I don't know all the details currently. So
Sure.
it's,
So I think,
like,
yeah, so I think some other folks on the governance board were discussing via email this week. And yeah, that's the main difference they see is an individual is unlikely to be interested to keep doing this for 5 or 10 years in a row.
yes,
But I don't think we need an individual like Brian to do this for 5 or 10 years in a row. I think if he built up something for 1 to 2 years, we would have a much more solid base to maintain from that point, is my guess.
yeah. And I think one of the perks, at least with the discussion with Ryan, was that, well, he's experienced with mud raking. So basically just cleaning up a lot of disjoint pieces and unifying them, etc.,
Mhm.
asking good questions. So if he can help us at least get bootstrapped in the first year, that would be perfect.
Yeah,
So, and then we can have continuous normal support.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that makes sense what you're proposing.
yeah. So I think that there's strengths to both the things I've seen the board mentioning,
Yeah,
board members mentioning. I think, yeah, I think having that boost, that focused one person doing all the stuff, initial thing, leaving behind some documentation of what they've set up, and then if they become disinterested after a year or two, at least they've set things up solidly that then
yeah,
a distributed team could keep it running. Is my guess. So that's, if you agree, Fabian, if that sounds good to you, that's what I would recommend to the board is hiring the individual for the 1 or 2 years that they're interested in doing it, even if it's only 1 or 2 years. I think that'll be beneficial and leave us better set up to hire Linux
yeah,
Foundation after that.
yep. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Any other comments on, sorry, I know that there's maybe a lot of details folks are out of the loop on, but if anybody else has any comments, I'd love to hear any, if anyone has any suggestions or ideas.
Your proposal is what I would have proposed, so I'm on board. It would also be interesting, just because I've never worked with them or don't understand them, to interview some of the LF people in the same way as you interviewed, was it Chris or Brian or whoever sorry, I
Brian,
forget
I forgot his last
Brian.
name.
I don't know, like we have a variety of needs, and yeah, assessing through some kind of technical interview whether the people who be doing the work are, experienced with that kind of stuff would be good. But anyways, maybe it's moot because I think your proposal makes sense to me.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'd be, I don't know, since it is like a whole team of people, different expertise, it would actually probably be interviewing like 3 or 4 or 5 people before we'd get a good picture of the team's knowledge.
Yeah, they don't really do that. You would meet with one of the IT team leads who would talk you through like what the project needs, and then he would resource accordingly, and there would be deliverables or it's like the statement of work that they would check against periodically, and if there's any concerns that that's not being met, then that would get raised with that lead, who would either choose to put someone else on there or
That
address
makes
it
perfect. That makes
however it needs
perfect.
to be addressed.
Okay. Yeah. Even so, I suppose if we wanted to interviewing, if we had a chance to meet with such a lead, that would be much more efficient than meeting with multiple people.
Yeah, they'd be able to fill you in on
Okay.
what staff they have available, or if like they don't have anyone who's available in that particular expertise, if they would need to hire somebody to be able to support the project in that way, that's a possibility because it's a
Yeah, I guess
busy
the thing that's interesting to me is, sorry, I forgot his name already again. Brian has experience with a language ecosystem and its CI/CD needs, which is a little bit specialized, right? Someone used to working with compilers and their test suites. And I just don't know if a sort of general IT contracting service has that kind of expertise. So that would be the thing I would try to suss out.
Well, I sent the same statement of work that Andy and Fabian put together to our IT head of IT and his team who evaluates scope for projects, and he said they could handle everything in it, no problem. So I don't
So
know, it could be that we have somebody on staff who is familiar and with that same kind of niche. I'm not sure.
Here's a question for you, Nate and Fabian. Fabian, would you be interested if you and I and any other TSD members interested had a meeting, like a 30-minute meeting with this lead, a lead person at LF to find out their reaction to the statement of work and talk with them about some of the details of things we're looking for, just to evaluate them versus Brian perhaps, and see just a more informed decision before we make the final recommendation of the board? Would that be something?
Sure. I think keeping it, as long as we keep it lightweight, so we're not
Yep.
making a mountain molehill, but it seems like it's useful knowledge to understand.
Yep.
Okay, so you'd like to attend, Nate, if the time works out?
If we can work out, yeah.
Okay, so Fabian, Nate, and I will, Michelle, if you could perhaps try to,
Is this gonna change your recommendation to the board at all?
Well, it's useful for, if we are thinking about this in the future, then we can understand our feelings. You know, I assume the LF team is not going to change dramatically and their capabilities.
I
No,
think it, yeah, it might not change the recommendation, but I guess partly it would be us reacting to what we learned at that meeting. And it also might help us inform us when we feel comfortable transitioning over from an individual to LF in that recommendation.
got it. Okay.
Thanks. All right. P for our blog articles from TST. So I've talked with the language design work group co-chairs about going first on a blog article. We've got a few bullet points and an outline, but we just need to flesh it out to, I think, Denise, you've recommended we get somewhere on around a page or so blog article. So I will ping again the language design work group and see if we can maybe get a live call to push that forward, or maybe even just the threat of scheduling a live call might get some writing done by myself as well, perhaps. So no other big updates there, but then I guess, Chris, I might be looking at you and Stefan for maybe going after that, maybe a couple months later. So
sure, let us
but
know.
I'll talk to you about that separately.
Yeah, see you in a week at the API work group meeting. Stefan may or may not be at that one.
Okay.
He's got a lot of vacations coming up, but Victor, his colleague, will be there. We can use him as a proxy, or
Great.
Jonathan. Yeah.
I will move on to Google Summer of Code 2025. I've written some updates here, which I've learned from an email from Billy. I don't know is Billy here live today?
Oh, hi, Andy.
Hey, if
Yeah.
you don't mind an update, feel free, please.
Yeah, so basically it's all summarized here. Like we have sent our short list of 6 proposals to Google, and we are expected to hear back on the final results by May 8th.
Great. And then I guess we'll plan to publicize them soon afterwards, whatever projects are accepted for us.
Yeah, so I think David has written a blog post about that, and I think he's planning to publish that.
Yeah, as soon as I'm given the heads up that we're ready to post the blog, I can get it posted and promoted.
Great. And
But
I go ahead.
But we should wait until all the projects are accepted. So
Yes,
after
absolutely.
May 8th. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, definitely don't want to pre-announce anything and then try to be embarrassed later.
Okay.
That we take something back on the announcement. But that's not too long to wait, just next week. I just want to, I'll do this again, Billy, so don't be embarrassed, I hope, but I only see the tip of the iceberg of the work you and the mentors are doing. I think there's probably a bunch of emails and GitHub comments and all kinds of stuff that I'm sure you're doing on this. I wouldn't be surprised if you've spent a month of your life on this year probably, or at least several weeks. So I just want to say thanks to you and all the other mentors for making this happen and doing all it needs to keep it moving along smoothly. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to give a lot of the credit to David this year. He helped a lot, the organizing side.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right, on the any other questions or
Actually,
comments?
yes, I have a point to raise. So the Google Summer of Code, they have a mentor summit. So one representative of the organization is being invited to attend there and basically just network and chat and represent the org. So this time it's a good opportunity to basically get your name out and actually mingle with other open source communities. I mean, that's how I got to know Brian, for example, and his work. Now, this time it's going to be in Munich in October. And so we can also figure out and think about who we want to send there, because they get a stipend of $1,000. Well, our organization gets a stipend of $1,000. And we can use the stipend basically for sending a representative. We can have marketing material or stickers or smaller things we can send there. And we could essentially decide who we want to send. So this is something we should consider. I did this last year, so I don't have to do this again. But there's any one of the org admins could, for example, be a representative.
So
I propose, for example, yeah.
I would recommend David.
Yes.
Yeah, like he's close, and
Yeah.
although I have some visa issues, I don't think I will be able to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David,
Yeah.
on hearing of this, is this something that you think you'd be interested in doing?
Yeah, I have to double check the dates, but shouldn't be a problem. So I can double check because I also received the email, and then I let you know as soon as possible. But yeah, for sure it's doable for me because I'm based in Antwerp, but I mean, Munich is easy to reach, so no problem. The main constraint is the date. That's it.
I hope it doesn't, you said October, I hope it's not October 14th through 16th, but I guess when the OTP is. But I guess we can check the date.
I think, yeah, it's end of October. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah.
Okay.
And then, well, one of the things that we need to discuss is basically the money goes to the organization, but it would be helpful to support the person attending with that money, which we have to discuss later on, I think.
Yep. I mean, speaking as a new governance board member, I believe it would be a good idea for us to help David attend financially for any travel expenses if that's reasonable for the other board members too.
Yeah, I concur. I think we discussed, but don't actually have a sort of formal travel policy for the organization. But this is an activity that's very valuable and that volunteers have contributed to. And so it, to me, just speaking myself right now in a non-committal way, it just makes sense that we would use those funds to support someone to go, especially if they don't have another way to pay for the trip through their employer or something else. So we'll have to have the governing board vote on that, but I don't foresee any issues.
Great. Anything else on the Google Summer of Code people would like to talk about?
Well, just thank you again to the volunteers who have done this. It's blossomed into a really nice activity that we do, and I know it's all on your backs, so it's much appreciated.
And yeah, feel free to reach out for help on anything that comes up if the load gets too high. All right, on to the P4 workshop. So I've got an update here. We have Fernando Ramos is currently the P4 Education Workgroup co-chair and has done a lot of work with P4 in research. And he has agreed to be a co-chair of the program committee for this year's workshop. And we have reached out to, and I think this is actually slightly out of date. We have made an offer to a person, Christina Moore, works at Microsoft. She has been kind of the public face of meetings involving the Dash project at Microsoft, which is a project at Microsoft. It's like extended APIs for the Sonic network operating system that are intended for systems that hardware-wise are programmable NICs that do extra services in a network, like fancy policy-based classification on connections and connection tracking and things like that. So it's something that Microsoft is very interested in deploying, and the Dash project, it doesn't, I wouldn't call P4 a critical piece of their infrastructure, but they have a reference model that they use to document and define the desired behavior of a Dash capable device that various volunteers have written P4 code for that. And I believe Chris Summers and folks at Keysight have used that pretty extensively for writing tests against it. So we're happy to have Christina Moore, and especially her sort of industry focus and Sonic focus will help it. I think OCP connections as well. Let me think.
So is she going to present, Andy? Or I may have missed some detail there.
We invited her to be a second program committee chair with Fernando Ramos. So she and Fernando might be emailing you or other people that you know soon to ask them to be on the program committee for selecting the program for the P4 workshop this year.
I see. Sorry, I was a little
Yep, no
spacing.
problem. And then I called your name, and then I drew you right back in. Yeah. So things are progressing there, and I believe Michelle or Denise, any updates that you wanted that have been happening? That I think the status that I recall is do we have an application for the OCP Global Summit to have the P4 workshop co-located there, and we're waiting to hear back in May?
Yes, so I think the events team at OCP are kind of in the middle of their OCP Europe event. So we have a tentative plan to meet with their head event coordinator within the next week or so to try to find out if they do have space for us, and if so, like what day and scope and all that. In the meantime, having the two co-chairs confirmed, we're trying to get a kickoff meeting just internally in the next couple of weeks as well, just to kind of start going over the timeline and what needs to be done when, so that when we do hear back from OCP, we're ready to hit the ground running. And we do also have a free nonprofit booth at OCP, regardless of whether the workshop is held in conjunction at the event. So that will be available for all days of the OCP Summit. And it does come with a number of free passes as well for staff who can work the booth and represent P4. So if the folks are going to be in the area in October, I know it's a little bit early to try to figure out if you're going for the P4 workshop or not. But if you are interested and thinking you'll be there, let us know, because we do want to put together a list of folks who can help staff the booth and spread the word about P4 at OCP.
Put me down on the list. I'll be there.
Yeah, and I did confirm we should have this locked in by the time early bird registration opens for OCP, as that doesn't open till June. So we will have time for folks to figure out, who would need some of our free passes if we get those, and who wants to take advantage of buying an early bird ticket before the price goes up.
In the event that we get a yes from the OCP Global Summit that P4 workshop will be co-located there, that's when, we'll definitely want to let everybody know early bird registration, because you can save significant money in buying an OCP registration to attend the P4 workshop that way if you get it early.
Right. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like several $100 savings or something pretty big.
It does, and I think it goes up like $300 or something like that when it jumps to the regular price. So it's definitely, we want to make sure folks who are able to pay do take advantage of that.
Great. Yep, that'd be good for us. I think it's a good service for us to, if we do find out where the OCP Global Summit, to make sure people know when they can get the best price.
Yeah, for sure. And we will have some passes to give out. It'll just kind of be a TBD until we finalize the details.
I believe accepted speakers might get. Is that
Yeah, there's
typical?
accepted speakers. I think we get a number of those. I think we actually get more than we'll probably need based on last year's agenda. And we also get like, I think 5 or 6 staff passes, which again, we're probably not going to need all of those. So I think we will have some on hand for folks in the community who want to attend and maybe can't get their company or school to cover the cost. You know, on a case by case basis, we should be able to make it work.
But all this is, yeah, sort of,
Yeah, TBD.
wait until we find out whether we're locally okay with OCP first, and then we'll get into the details much more heavily later.
Exactly.
All right. Let's see. Anything, other questions or comments on either the workshop? So I believe, if I understand correctly, Michelle, the booth at the OCP Global Summit, that's independent of whether they say yes or no to having the P4 workshop co-located.
Right.
That's a yes for that regardless.
Yes, yes, we do have
Okay.
booth space regardless of whether a workshop gets accepted to be co-located. So, you know, Denise will be hopefully in the area. I think she's local and has, I believe, said that she can work some of it, but it is, you know, long days. So if there are other folks who are in the area, and would be willing, you know, or interested in attending the summit and taking on some shifts at the booth, that would be awesome.
And so, yeah, I guess we'll plan this in more detail later, but it's probably good to have, I don't know, poster or some other display or a laptop with a screen showing some presentation or video on a loop kind of thing would be nice to have in addition to person answering questions live.
Yeah, it would be great to be thinking about what would be interesting for folks walking by, what would kind of grab people's attention. And I think it'd also be great if any of you know if your companies are going to be participating at OCP, if we can, we've been brainstorming some ways to maybe do some cross collaboration. So if you know your company is going to be there, let us know and we can reach out to the right person to see if they'd be interested in some cross promotion.
Of booths or things like that. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Good thinking.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Denise?
Actually, we can do cross promotion both of booths as well as any talks folks might be giving during OCP that have relevant P4 information. We could certainly list that as well. One other note is, as I recall, in the past, OCP for the booth also provided a monitor. So yeah, all we would need is a laptop, and they had a monitor. They provided all the signage. We would just need to provide the text for it. So it's pretty generous in terms of what they offer.
Good. So we should probably maybe not this month, but if anybody's interested in volunteering for any of that stuff, definitely contact Michelle or Denise to let them know about your interest. But if not, we will definitely bring it up in future TST meetings as we get move along. And we'll start asking louder. All right. P4 Developer Days. David is here, who has taken on the lion's share of organizing the P4 Developer Days that are occurring this year. Do you want to give us an update, David, please?
Yeah, so we didn't schedule yet any new appointment in the agenda, but I reach out Mads Dam from KTH, and he's open to do a presentation. And I also sent some messages to Joanna Cholema from Altera, and she's also open to do a presentation. Denise sent them two date proposal, but they didn't reply yet. So seems promising, but we have to wait. I'm also send an email to Nick Sultana from Illinois Institute of Technologies, and he also is open to do a presentation, but we are not in a phase. We didn't propose yet any date to him, so let's see. But basically, this is what's going on.
Great. And I should say, when you say no new ones, that's You mean no new ones on top of the 3 that
Yeah,
are
yeah,
already
on top of the agenda, sorry.
So yeah, you're looking at you're considering those as like those are done and organized, and you're looking at past and the dates past that and what to do then. So that's great. Thank you. And yeah, I guess anybody who has any ideas for either wants to give a presentation or ideas for companies to contact or people at certain companies to talk, feel free to contact David if you have any, and Denise. Any questions or comments on those? All right. This last one I didn't have on the summarized agenda. I just have it. This is still an ongoing task of getting our software copyright notice, all the copyright notices and license notices in our source files, a little bit modernized and updated and explicit than we have them now. No new status this month. I've been doing so in the past, we've gotten rid of things like there's been a few confidential and proprietary notices left over in our code base that we've started by removing those. And Fabian and I got rid of some uses of SCAPI, which requires a GPL v2 license for any Python code using that. So we've reduced quite a bit the number of source files we have using that, but we still have a handful that are test only. So I still need to, I'm still yet to write a list of questions that Michelle can submit to the Linux Foundation sort of intellectual property consultant, whoever, or software licensing expert to get answers on those. Just looking to dot I's and cross T's before we start making a lot of changes in GitHub to add copyright notices and license notices. But the plan is to do an en masse addition of a lot of that stuff after running the details of the idea through this group, after we run it through legal. So that will be coming in future months, but it's been kind of a slow burn in the background for a while. Any other, I think that's the whole agenda I have. Michelle or Denise, anything that jumps to your mind of things I might have forgotten to add or missed here?
No, not on my end.
I think just keep an eye out for continued content that we can use, that Denise can use to promote P4. She's always looking for something, and I know the P4 Developer Days have been greatly helpful. So thank you again, David and Billy, for the Summer of Code stuff. That's going to be really exciting to promote. But I think that's it. Other than the events. That's what we forgot to add, Andy.
You want to ask her anything about that now?
Yeah, so there's a couple of events.
Would you like to share your screen? I can stop sharing.
I dropped the matrix into the chat. So there's Open Source Summit Europe in Amsterdam, which I think we talked about and briefly discussed at a prior meeting. If anybody is interested in attending, if that makes sense to either have somebody go to. There's also an event coming up in November called Embedded World that has a July 25th CFP deadline, and that's in Anaheim, California. So potentially more accessible for some folks. If anyone thinks that either of those would be worth trying to have some P4 representation at, because we really are, the governing board, the TST, you all are the ones who can represent P4 at these events. It would be a good way to kind of branch out from our own self-produced events. But again, it's whether that's worth the time and effort and trouble,
I guess one thing perhaps tangentially related is I've forgotten whether the board has approved publishing a job listing for a kind of a technical evangelist or executive kind of person for P4. I've forgotten the title. Sorry.
P4 ecosystem lead. Yeah, and that's being worked on through our HR channels to get it posted and distributed. So I wouldn't necessarily count on that person being available for I mean, at least Open Source Summit Europe, right? But potentially for embedded world. And we did kind of talk about this in the marquee meeting of, we've done this with some of my other projects where we have kind of a generic like CFP or talk pitch that, you know, anyone on the TST or the board could do. And we submit for events that are interested, with the caveat that, like, if it gets accepted, then we kind of try to find somebody who's available to give the talk. So we could put something like that together and submit it to, you know, Embedded World if we think we're confident at least someone will be able to go actually give the talk. Or we could, you know, find somebody who has a more technical talk that they think fits better and submit that instead. Or we could ignore all of these outside events and just focus on the 2025 workshop. That's also an option.
I do thank you for collecting the list and sharing it with this group, just because, yeah, there might be an opportunistic of, oh, I'm already happy to go to that anyway. And it's good to have the list to find out if anybody is already planning to attend one of these.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see any other than the OCP Global Summit yet that I know I would be at.
Yeah, I think there were some opportunities further in the spring, so we'll need to keep an eye on those for 2026. I think a couple of them we were too late to, you know, we missed their CFP deadlines, so it'd be good to keep an eye on them for next year. But again, if anybody knows of any other events where P4 could be a good fit, that was one of the goals for 2025 for the board for the project, was to kind of continue to be trying to raise the awareness of P4 outside of just the P4 community. And these events are probably one of the easier ways to do that.
I guess, let me think. So I know I'm actually a co-author on a paper that was presented at NSDI last week. That I don't know if that was in your events list. That's sort of more, I think it's a little more research, academic focused conference, but some industry as well. That technical work, it was done by a grad student that I kind of informally advise. I guess if that's closely enough related to P4 kind of technical stuff, that a blog article might be something of interest to pursue.
Absolutely. And if there's a paper, I don't know if there's a paper or if it was strictly a presentation, but
should be a
you
paper
know,
too, I think.
yeah, if the paper, we certainly add that to the publication page, and we also do promote that on social media. So open
Okay.
to a blog though as well. So
I'll email you and copy the co-author who did most of the writing.
sounds good. Also, per what Michelle was suggesting, is start looking ahead, maybe add a tab in here for 2026, because as you know, CFP deadlines can be pretty long sometimes, so we don't miss out again.
Yep.
Yeah, I think academic conferences could be a good option as well. So if you know of one coming up, that would be great. So please, you know, you all are the ones who are in the industry and in the academia and know what's going on. We're kind of relying on you to let us know, and we can help organize all the details. Oh, that was all I had.
Thanks. Any other topics folks would like to raise, or just doesn't have to be a big topic, questions or other things you'd like to discuss today? I suppose one joke suggestion I could make is, does anybody look good in a tuxedo and wants to reprise the role of James Bond for a future video?
You know, we could probably use generative AI at this point to do a virtual Nick, a virtual Nick and a virtual Vince.
Wow.
That would be fun to do like low production value parodies of those videos with, like, you know, Andy and Fabian. like
Oh, that would be
the point
fun.
is not to do it, don't do it well. Like, do it, it should be bad.
Yeah. Do it like Beavis and Butthead style or something. Yeah. Okay.
That's great.
I just recently rewatched that video. And yeah, it's
That
like,
should be a P4 Summer of Code project, but keep
I
it
mean,
stealth.
since we're in goofy mode here, I mean, I once made a video with Nick for something semi-serious, and the man could have had a career as a Hollywood producer. I mean, he bought and mailed us all green screens so that we could, and then like gave us very specific instructions on how to record the raw video, and then he edited it using some fairly professional software. All
Nick
for like
did all that?
yeah, and like he was
Oh my
obsessed with the details, and I was like, this is an unusual level of dedication for sort of a medium value video that does not need this much production value.
Obviously,
So
he needed
I
to
think
blow off steam doing something
I think
fun.
the original one they actually got the Stanford helicopter, if I recall. Like I think there was footage, like I don't know if it was flying, but like I think they like talked their way onto like the hospital's like helicopter or something.
it's fun rewatching that video after so many years, and how many people I now recognize in the airplane scene as past
Well, there's
co-passengers.
two. I mean, have you seen the old ONS one? The older one where they are in the helicopter, they fly all over Silicon Valley and then parachute into the Open Networking Summit.
Okay.
And there's the one that has, Robert Soule and Prem
Yeah.
and yeah.
All right.
As another friend of mine says, the ham is cooking. People do these things.
I do own
Yeah.
a tuxedo. If anyone wants to come borrow a tuxedo, but you got to come to upstate New York to retrieve it. So,
All right. Well, I think that's a sign that I am
Yeah.
definitely out of ideas for topics for today. But it was fun.
everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody.